Hello everybody. How you doing today? I hope you're having a good day. Kind of a nice day here, but pretty nasty weather, so I hope you can make the best of it. Just remember, this is the day the Lord has made, and rejoice and be glad in it. And we should always be giving our thanksgiving to God. All right, the title of the lesson today is called Stealing from God. You know, in Malachi 3:8, we read the quote, "Will a man rob God?" As we read the text in the book, we see that the robbing has to do with the failure to tithe and make good offerings to the Lord. And that's what he was complaining about. And the people sitting there, who, me? I mean, why are you pointing your finger at me? I mean, that's the way people are today. So to take something without permission is robbery, theft, or stealing. I mean, the Israelites of yesterday were guilty of robbing God. In fact, he says the whole nation was guilty of the theft. Well, let's fast forward about 2,400 years, and guess what? Things are not any different. People are still robbing God. They're still stealing from him. So there's several factors we need to consider. And first, we have to understand that God owns everything. There's no doubt about it. I mean, that's what David acknowledged. Remember, David had a great prayer there in 1 Chronicles 29:10 through 19. For David acknowledged God was the owner of all things in the universe, and he felt so blessed that God blessed him with enough riches where he could contribute to the building of the temple. And that's a great prayer in 1 Chronicles 29:10 through 19. And so he did this in preparation to turn the kingdom over to Solomon. And so he provided that offering for the temple. He got a lot of supplies ready, made agreements with a lot of kings to use some of their resources, and had everything prepared so Solomon could build the temple there in Jerusalem. So David prayed that God had blessed him and that he was honored to make an offering, even though God owned everything. And yeah, God still owns everything, but he does allow us certain privileges and the use of these things. And we must realize God has allowed us the use of, the things that we have, our possessions. Sometimes if we look at it, we have really no other choice other than say these are blessings from God. Because when you look around the world, what we have is so much greater than what people in this world have. There's so many people that don't even have floors in their huts. And so we just got to feel blessed that we are there. If you can afford electricity, then you're blessed beyond measure, beyond what most people in this world even have. And so God has used and allowed us the use of these things. So it is our responsibility to handle them wisely and use them in a way that glorifies God and shares them with others as the need arises. Yet as we consider our passage there from Malachi, let us look at other ways that we can rob God. And this should not be hard to figure out. Most of us probably know this already. So we rob God when we fail to do our duty to him. It's just simple. We get so busy with our own agendas that God's agenda gets left behind or gets a lower priority rating. And we remember in Haggai that God told the people they were busy building their own paneled houses, but the house of God lay destitute, barren, and unfinished. That was in Haggai chapter 1 and verse 4. And so let's look at some other things. See, we're taught to pray all the time, right? 1 Thessalonians 5:17. When we fail to pray, we are robbing God of our communication with him. And we owe God our praise, our adoration, and all the time. And we also owe him the time of day to speak to him and ask for his blessings upon ourselves and others, to cast our cares upon him and speak to him about our problems. And by doing so, we learn to put our trust. We also rob God when we fail to behave as a true Christian should. See, God is expecting us to live up to his standards and to be a light around us, around us as an example to show people the truth. And so failure to set a good example will not help people find God whom they just might be seeking. You know, John 4:21, Jesus said there are people seeking to worship God. And sometimes we're put in someone's pathway to be a light for them. What happens if we turn the light out? Well, that's what Jesus said, in Matthew chapter 5. Nobody lights a lamp and puts it under a bushel basket. No, you set it where everybody can get light. A lot of people who wear the name of Christ, they kind of hide it. And that's not good. God doesn't like that. So we need to help people find God, and the best way to do that is through our example. And so we must live with this in mind. That think about this, if I do not set a good example, who will? I mean, let's face it. People in this world are not going to be setting up an example that'll cause people to seek God. So that falls upon every one of us as Christians. See, if I cannot influence someone to God, they may remain lost forever. And that deprives God of another soul that would offer praise to his name. And that's what God wants. See, we rob God when we waste time. Now, I truly believe that God gives us time for recreation or relaxation. And yes, he does allow us the privilege to watch some television or get on the computer, maybe play some games or do something else. But sometimes we abuse that privilege when we take too much recreation and too much relaxation time. Yes, we need to get to work. Yes, we need to work for the Lord. And sometimes we just really don't have time because we spend all our time watching TV shows or something like that. And so, honestly, we know that we spend too much time in front of the TV or the computer. And we realize that. And sure, these have their proper use. I mean, this is a great use right here, what we're doing now. But if you're not careful, you can spend hours on Facebook just talking to people about what they had for dinner or what they don't like about politics or something like that. And no, there's proper uses for everything, and a lot of people abuse them. So don't be guilty of that. Don't abuse your privilege here. I mean, use it to God's glory. I mean, yeah, you're on Facebook for 8, 10, 12 hours a day. Guess what? Start sharing spiritual messages with other people. I mean, start sharing quotes from the Bible. And who knows, you may be able to influence someone to seek God, and you'll help God to receive another soul that will glorify his name. All right, now, we could talk about robbing God by just not going to church. Well, that's a problem, and in these days, it's a real big problem. And when we're not singing in the assembly, we're robbing God. God wants to hear our hearts singing to him. And we're not contributing according to our means. And that is a way of robbing God. Some people think, well, that's when you talk about robbing, you think of monetary value. So, yeah, that is robbing God. You're keeping the local church from operating on a good budget, and sometimes they have to make decisions that may not be very good. And also you're not partaking of the Lord's Supper. I mean, that in itself is a means of robbing God. And you're not making the effort to learn important things. You know what? That's also robbing God. You think, well, that may be on a personal level, but still, it is still robbing God when you're not trying to learn. Because let's face it, one of our commands is to grow. One of our commands is to learn what we can and then share our knowledge with others. So what we need to do is examine ourselves and make sure we are not depriving God of anything that we owe to him. I mean, this may require some adjustments in our lifestyle, but you know what? If we do, we will receive greater blessings from God. God has already promised to reward the faithful and to shower us with blessings. And what God will do for us will be in greater measure than we can imagine or deserve. I mean, that's kind of what it says there in Ephesians 3 and verse 20. So consider those thoughts. It's a simple lesson, but think about these things. I'm showing I'm gone 22 minutes. I doesn't feel like it. But anyway, do these things for God, and He will be pleased with you. Okay, you have a good day now. All right, bye-bye. How did that get to be 22 minutes?